welcome. On the news, we have Kim Jong-un displays nuclear-capable missiles and drones. President Biden meets Italy's Meloni for talks. Kiev claims success as southern fighting increases. First woman executed in Singapore over heroin. And Jake Sullivan meets Saudi Crown Prince for talks. Kim Jong-un, North Korea leader in the capital Pyongyang, has showcased nuclear-capable missiles and latest attack drones with a huge military parade. On Thursday night, while accompanied by visiting delegations from China and Russia, he oversaw the parade to mark Victory Day, North Korea's name for the end of hostilities in the 1950-53 Korean War. The parade featured North Korea's Hwasong-17 and Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missiles and a flyover by fresh attack and spy drones, reports said on Friday. Sergei Shoigu, Russian defense minister, and Chinese ruling party official Li Hongzhong, the first foreign dignitaries to visit Pyongyang since the COVID-19 pandemic, watched the parade with Kim from a balcony overlooking the capital. Reports from North Korea said earlier that Kim and Shoigu had viewed a military exhibition together and held meetings on military matters connected to the regional and international security environment. Leif Erik Isley, a professor of international studies at Iowa University in Seoul, said China's representation at North Korea's parading of nuclear-capable missiles raises serious questions about Beijing enabling Pyongyang's threats to global security. Given Russia's need for ammunition for its illegal war in Ukraine and Kim Jong-un's willingness to personally give the Russian defense minister a tour of North Korea's arms exhibition, United Nations member states should increase vigilance for observing and penalizing sanctions violations. Kim's newest showcase of military power comes at a time of imminent tensions on the Korean peninsula. North Korea has carried out repeated weapon tests this year, including many launches of the Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missile, which Pyongyang has described as its most powerful weapon yet. Russia and China are among the few countries to maintain friendly associations with the North, which has been heavily sanctioned and censured over its development of nuclear weapons and missiles. Joe Biden, United States President, commended Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni for her support of Ukraine as the White House downplayed differences over her hard-right government stances on China, immigration, abortion, and LGBTQ rights. Biden said the U.S. and Italy were standing strong with Ukraine, and Meloni's government had offered very strong support, opposing Russian atrocities during a meeting with the Italian leader on Thursday. And I thank the Italian people, Biden told Meloni at the start of their talks at the Oval Office. I want to thank them for supporting you and supporting Ukraine. It makes a big difference. Meloni, whose government has been cast by critics as Italy's first far-right administration since World War II, said she was proud of Italy's support for Ukraine. She said the two leaders discussed Italy's participation in China's Belt and Road Initiative BRI, but Washington's approach was not to dictate. Biden's warm welcome of the Italian leader showed a contrast with former comments stating fears about the implications of Meloni's election last year for democracy and international alliances such as NATO. Meloni, whose Brothers of Italy party has historical relations to Benito Mussolini's fascist movement, has criticized mass immigration, limited same-sex parental rights, and praised far-right political parties in Poland and Spain. She has dismissed the suggestion her party is a fascist and has surprised some observers by staking out more moderate positions on hot-button issues including immigration than critics feared. On Thursday, she said, according to reports, that she aligned more closely with Republicans, but that should be no obstacle to having a great relationship with Biden. U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby downplayed controversy over Meloni's politics. Kirby declined to be drawn on differences over China, saying only that the two leaders discussed shared concerns and perspectives and challenges related to the country. The two leaders promised to continue their support for Ukraine and reinforce dialogue on the opportunities and challenges posed by the People's Republic of China in a joint statement after their meeting. In 2019, Italy became the first G7 country to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion infrastructure drive aimed at creating a new Silk Road bridge in Asia and Europe. Meloni is considering Italy's continuing participation in the initiative, which automatically renews next year if neither side opts out, and has suggested that Rome can still enjoy good relations with China outside of the deal. Now talking Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine's military says it has had victory on one of the front lines in southeast Ukraine as Western officials talk of a major push taking place. In a video published by President Zelensky, Ukrainian troops said they had taken the village of Staromaskor. The village, 150 kilometers, 90 miles east of the city of Zaporizhia, was liberated under dense artillery fire and airstrikes, said the army. Ukraine has not confirmed that it has increased its counteroffensive, but Russian President Vladimir Putin said Ukraine's attacks had significantly intensified. He said, according to report in St. Petersburg, they had had no success. All counteroffensive attempts were stopped and the enemy was pushed back with high casualties. Russian-backed militia leader Alexei Khodorkovsky contradicted Putin, saying Ukraine had methodically bombarded Staromoski for many days and made gains, holding on to the outskirts and pushing on. President Zelensky posted video of troops holding up a Ukrainian flag in the village, and Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said they were now continuing to clear the settlement. Ukraine's counteroffensive started on a number of fronts last month but has seen very few clear gains so far. Kiev's generals have cautioned that fast results are almost impossible because of Russia's fortified defense lines and rows of minefields. Going ahead, the first time the city-state has executed a woman in nearly 20 years, Singapore has hanged a 45-year-old citizen who was caught with 31 grams of heroin. On Friday, Saradewi Binti Jamani was hung after being convicted of trafficking no less than 30.72 grams of the drug in 2018, the Central Narcotics Bureau said in a statement. The Bureau said Njamani had been accorded full due process under the law and had access to legal counsel throughout the process. Njamani's execution proceeded despite protests from human rights groups, including Amnesty International, which argues Singapore's use of capital punishment for drug offences violates international law and does little to deter drug use. Amnesty International said in a statement earlier this week, "We call on the international community, particularly states who have abolished the death penalty in law or practice, to help halt this inhumane, ineffective and discriminatory practice in Singapore." The group of United Nations experts in April described the rate of executions in Singapore for drug offences as highly alarming and called for an immediate suspension after claims a 46-year-old ethnic Tamil citizen was hanged despite being denied adequate interpretation during police interrogations. Singapore has hanged 15 people, including foreigners, for drug-related offences since March 2022, when it resumed executions after a hiatus during the COVID-19 pandemic. On Wednesday, Mohammed Aziz bin Hussein, 57, was hung for trafficking about 50 grams of heroin. The city-state last executed a woman in 2004 when Yemi Wen, a 36-year-old hairdresser, was hung for drug trafficking. Despite a reputation as a well-run business hub, Singapore's ultra-strict laws place it in the company of a handful of authoritarian states, including China and North Korea, that impose the death penalty for drug offences. Now on politics, the White House has announced that United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Saudi leaders in Jeddah to deliberate peace efforts in the Middle East. But Thursday's readout made no mention of a possible normalization agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel, a U.S. priority in the region. The meeting instead centered on bilateral and regional matters, the White House said, including initiatives for a more peaceful, secure, prosperous and stable Middle East. However, Sullivan's visit coincides with an ongoing effort under U.S. President Joe Biden to create ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia, two longtime adversaries. In attendance at Thursday's meeting was Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who has served as Prime Minister since 2022. Sullivan earlier visited bin Salman in May as the two deliberated greater relations between the Middle East and India. And last month, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken sat down with bin Salman in Jeddah as part of warming ties with the Crown Prince. Bin Salman remains a controversial figure in the U.S. due to his association with the 2018 killing of a journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, and other alleged human rights abuses. Biden had previously disavowed the Saudi government on the presidential campaign trail, citing Khashoggi's assassination. But in the years since taking office as president, the Democratic leader has has warmed to bin Salman, continuing the U.S.'s close ties with the Saudi kingdom. Biden himself visited bin Salman in Saudi Arabia last year, a move denounced by groups like Human Rights Watch, HRW. On weather and climate, Typhoon Doksuri makes landfall in China. Typhoon Doksuri has swept into China's southeastern Fujian province, unleashing heavy rain and violent gusts of wind that thrashed power lines, triggering fires, uprooted trees, and forced factories and shopping malls to shut down. The second strongest typhoon to land in Fujian after deadly Typhoon Meranti in 2016 forced the closure of schools, businesses, and the evacuation of workers from offshore oil and gas fields, according to reports. According to the China Meteorological Administration, CMA, Xiamen, Guangzhou, and Puxian recorded hourly rainfall beyond 50 millimeters on Friday. There are power and water cuts in some areas of Jinjiang City and Guangzhou in Fujian province, residents said. Doksuri, the second typhoon to make landfall in China in less than 2 weeks, will move north, where 10 provinces will experience heavy rain, weather forecasters predict. It is anticipated to continue to move in a northwesterly direction with gradually weakening intensity, China's CMA added. Typhoon Doksuri has already left a wake of death and destruction in its path as it moved from the Philippines across southern Taiwan. The storm toppled trees and cut power to hundreds of thousands of homes in southern Taiwan, prompting authorities to shut down business for a second day on Friday and warn of extreme winds, landslides, and floods. Doksuri was categorized as the second strongest typhoon level by Taiwan's Weather Bureau. A hurricane-force wind alert was issued in the Taiwanese islands of Penghu and Kinmen, where residents were warned to brace for gusts of more than 155 kilometers per hour. The storm had cut power to over 278,000 homes across Taiwan and downed hundreds of trees in Kaohsiung. Rainfall exceeding 1,000 millimeters was recorded in the mountainous eastern and southern parts of the island. More than 200 domestic and international flights were suspended or delayed on Friday, and railway services between southern and eastern Taiwan were halted. Moving now into Africa, Putin pledges grain exports to African leaders. Vladimir Putin, Russian president, has said his country will continue to export grain, including some free shipments to Africa, despite sanctions. While discussing the post-Black Sea grain deal at the Russia-African summit in St. Petersburg, he promised large no-cost shipments of grain to 6 African countries. He referred to the difficulties of maintaining the supply with what he called illegal sanctions, which seriously impede the supply of Russian food, complicate transportation, logistics, insurance, and bank payments. Delegates from many African nations called for an effective deal on grain shipments. Azali Osamani, chairperson of the African Union and president of the Union of Comoros, said an agreement on grain supplies must be possible to try to save thousands of people who are dependent on these imports. Africa's economic food security will be most at risk, especially since the continent is already badly affected by food price shocks caused by the interruption of its supplies. We therefore urge the stakeholders to find common ground to allow the resumption of employment to secure grain from Ukraine and Russia to our continent. The summit follows Russia's withdrawal from a deal that permits Black Sea exports, key to numerous African steps that drew a strong condemnation around the world and raised new threats to global food security. Putin said that Russia made the decision to withdraw from the deal because none of the terms of the deal concerning the withdrawal of Russian exports of grain and fertilizers to world markets from sanctions was fulfilled. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'll bring you more stories. Stay with us. Welcome back. The long-awaited ministerial list says Wike, El-Rufai, others face Senate screening on Monday. On Monday, the Senate will begin the screening of the ministerial nominees submitted to it by President Bola Tinubu on Thursday. This is just as indications show that the president will create new ministries and form his full cabinet in 2 weeks. Speaking shortly after the names of 28 nominees sent to the federal lawmakers were read on the floor by the president of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, the Senate spokesperson Yemi Moduratha Ekiti South, said the upper chamber had halted all its activities to restart the screening immediately. We will start by 11 a.m. on Monday and other days at 10 a.m. We are ready to sit all day to screen them with no limitation of hours. We won't even time them. We will listen to them reel out their blueprints to us. The screening will be done in the presence of Nigerians, he said. Akpabio at plenary unveiled the list consisting of 28 nominees. The Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, delivered the list to the Senate President. Prominent people who made the list are former Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike Rivers, former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, and former Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi. Others are the acting chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Abubakar Kyari of Borno, the party's women leader, Betta Udu, Cross River, Deputy Chief Whip of the 9th House of Representatives in Kiruka, Oyejo Cha Abia, lawyer Latif Fagbemi San Kwara, and the President's Special Advisor on Media Strategy and Special Duties, Dele Aleke of Ekiti State. Also contained in the list is the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Adebayo Adelabu Oyo, former Minister of State Health, Ali Pati Bauchi, and Senator John Eno of Cross River. The rest are Abubakar Momo of Edo, Ambassador Yusuf Maitama of Bauchi, Ahmed Dengiwa of Katsina, Hanatu Musawa of Katsina, Chief Uche Naji Enugu, Doris Ineche Imo, Mohammed Badaru of Jigawa, Perikpe Eko Akwa Ibom, Olubumi Tunde Ojo Ondo, Stella Oketete Delta Uju Ohanaye Anambra, and Bello Goroyo of Sokoto. Mohammed Idris of Niger, Olowale Edun of Ogun, Iman Suleiman of Nasarawa, Joseph Utzef of Benue, and Sani Danladi Taraba also made the 28-man list. Although the Constitution prescribes that the President shall appoint at least a minister from each of the 36 states of the Federation, the list sent by Tinubu contained names of nominees from 25 states, leaving out 11 states. The states not yet covered are Lagos, Kano, Adamawa, Bayelsa, Gombe, Kebbi, Kogi, Osun, Plateau, Yobe, and Zamfara, while Bauchi, Cross River, and Katsina states got 2 slots each. Abbas names Wasi 3 others committee chairmen. On Thursday, Tajuddin Abbas, Speaker of the House of Representatives, constituted the standing committees of the House. Abbas, however, added the number of the committees to 134 committees from 110 constituted by his predecessor, Femi Gbajabiamila. This means he created 24 new committees in the 360-member House. Among those named as committee heads are ex-Deputy Speaker Idris Wase, Yusuf Gagdi, and Musa Batara, all of who aspired to speakership seat against Abbas some months ago. Gagdi and Batara later withdrew from the race. Wasi APC Plateau got the chairmanship of the less fancied Committee on Federal Character, while Batara APC Borno was appointed the chairman of the Committee on Federal Capital Territory. Gagdi retained the headship of the Committee on the Navy, which he headed under Mr. Gbajabiamila. Abbas named Abubakar Bichi APC Kano as the committee chairman on appropriations, and he is to be deputized by Idu Aguirewe PDP Ebonyi. President Bola Tinubu's political ally James Faleke APC Lagos retained the Finance Committee chairmanship, which he headed in the 9th session under Gbajabiamila. Ditto for his deputy Abdullahi Saidu APC Niger. Faleke, who comes from Kogi State, was the secretary of Tinubu campaign organization until some months back. Bamidele Salam PDP Oshun is to chair the Committee on Public Accounts, while Babajimi Benson APC Lagos retained the Committee on Defense. The former leader of the House, Al-Hassan Dogwa APC Kano, is the new committee chairman on petroleum upstream. Finally, on the news, federal government approves fresh 25,000 allowance to doctors. In a bid to suspend the ongoing nationwide strike by resident doctors, the federal government has granted approval for the payment of 25,000 naira peculiar allowance to medical and dental doctors in federal public hospitals and clinics in the country. This was contained in a letter dated July 26, 2023, titled Accoutrement Allowance for Medical and Dental Doctors in Hospitals, Medical Centers and Clinics in Federal NDAs. The letter, which was signed by the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the Income, Salaries and Wages Commission, ECO the approval takes effect from June 1, 2023. All inquiries relating to this circular should be directed to the Commission, the letter reads. On Tuesday, resident doctors under the aegis of the Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors (NARD) had begun an indefinite nationwide strike demanding payment of new hazard allowance, skipping allowance, immediate payment of the 2023 MRTF, immediate release of the circular on 1-for-1 replacement of doctors in hospitals, and payment of skipping arrears. Meanwhile, the Director General of the Budget Office, Ben Akubweze, yesterday alleged that some medical doctors who have left Nigeria in search of greener pastures still have their names on the nominal rolls of hospitals in the country. He made this known during a meeting between the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee to tackle the strike action embarked on by resident doctors in the country. Akubweze appealed to the doctors to stop holding Nigerians to ransom with industrial action, saying it was affecting Nigerians negatively. Honorable Tanko Zununu, the deputy chairman of the ad hoc committee, in his remarks at the meeting said it was vital to find a solution to the non-stop strike as Nigerians are at the receiving end. Zununu urged the resident doctors to be reasonable and give the government more time to address their grievances. In his contribution, the national president of the National Association of Resident Doctors, Dr. Emeka Orji, listed issues that led to the strike to include the payment of examination and training allowance, loss of manpower, downgrading of members by the National Medical Postgraduate College, non-payment of skipping arrears, arrears of minimum wage, upward review and consolidation of salary structure, and that the association has been giving government warning over time to no avail. A recap of major stories says Kim Jong-un displays nuclear-capable missiles and drones. President Biden meets Italy's Meloni for talks. Kyiv claims success as southern fighting increases. First woman executed in Singapore over heroin. And Jake Sullivan meets Saudi Crown Prince for talks. That's all in the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend ahead.